Well, well. Wait, okay, so you're back. I wonder where you were going,
Yes.
Gary. Well, good evening, and welcome to the Perfect Balance Hour of Power. This is where we're talking running, we're talking matters runners. Tonight, I'm joined by the amazing Gary Smith. Gary, welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thank you, Stan. It's a privilege and a blessing to be a part of your show. Thank you for the invitation.
Gary, we invited you because I think you have a story, one heck of a story as a runner, and there are many facets from it, all technical, physical, mental, and all emotional. You are an amazing athlete, and I will leave that to you to tell us. I've decided, because of how broad and how deep your story is, we shall have this as a two-way show. We'll start with one half of your story tonight, and then we'll come to the second half of your story on Sunday. But before we get all that, just tell us, who is Gary Smith and how did you get involved with the track and field?
Okay, well, I'm Gary Smith, born and bred in the town of Luton, and my journey in athletics began at around the age of 7. I always remember being in my kind of junior school competing from a young age, and always racing different guys and stuff on the race field and in sports days and stuff like that. And from a young age, I had a passion for athletics, a strong passion for athletics. Loved it, absolutely loved it from a young age. So yeah, that's kind of where my athletics career started. When I look back and reflect now, it's something that was it's in my DNA. It's how I was built. It's how I was made and created to be. Like I said, about the age of 7, I started in the sport. My mum was my biggest support system at the time. I used to win all my races. I think there was the odd race where I might have come a close second, but generally I won all my races. And then I think I was around the age of 7, 8, we moved from one area to another area. And one of the first things that I was challenged with walking into the school, being the new boy, was, "Are you fast?" That was one of the questions I was asked. And me being me was like, "Yes, I am." So that's where it started. And then I was challenged by a few boys to races up and down the playground, sorry. And I won my races and kind of at that small age gained their respect.
Indeed. Yeah. Tell us then, when did you start formally into athletics? There's that interest from, school playground sort of engagement there. When did you actually decide, well, let me take this seriously and let me get into some formal structures for track and field? When did that happen? And how did it happen?
Okay. So when I was young, like I said, in the junior school and stuff, I used to run right up until probably around the age of 11, funny enough. And unfortunately for me, when I was little, my mum and dad split up when I was about 9 years of age. And that had a bit of an impact on me at the time, because my mum was my greatest supporter. She'd always be at my little competitions, putting my numbers on my T-shirts and cheering me on the sideline. But then at the age of 11, I continued to run in school and stuff. But at the age of 11, I made that transition from junior school to high school. And in the first year of high school, I was about 11, I lost my first race. And I mean, in distance, it was probably less than half a meter, but I lost my first proper race. And it it didn't sit too well with me. My mum wasn't there to support me at the time, and my dad was busy working, and I didn't like it. And so I stopped. I actually stopped athletics. I stopped running. I kind of said, I'm never going to run again. And I kind of spent a lot of time playing other sports, football, tennis. But my sister, who's 2 years younger than me, got involved in athletics. She must have been around the age of 12, around 12. I'd have been around 14 at the time.
Yeah.
And then she convinced me to come to the athletics track. And reluctantly, I went. But when I went and put my feet on the track, I just knew that's where I needed to be. And I absolutely loved it. And I never left the track until I decided to leave later on down my career. But so for then, when I got on the track, I was always a sprinter. I was never doing any other technical events or anything like that.
Yeah.
Then one day I was at home, and I think I was watching Udanka Donkova run the ladies hurdles, and she smashed the world record, the 100-meter hurdles world record. And I looked at that event and I thought, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. I had no knowledge of hurdles, didn't know that they get higher, taller, 3 foot, 3 foot 3, 3 foot 6. And then I discovered a coach at the track who took me under her wing, my coach called Jan Smith, and she began to nurture me and train me as a proper athlete to run in club meets and stuff like that. So it was a bit of a ropey start, because I said I wanted to do the hurdles, and she was great. She persevered. And then I saw one of who's my training partner now, a special guy at the track running the hurdles, and watching him. You've viewed him recently, Mr. Wilkinson. Watching Des, I was absolutely mesmerized. As a 14, 15-year-old, I was mesmerized by the event and the fluency and the way the event looked. And I fell in love with the event then. Was I any good? I wasn't any good. Technically, I was really poor. But between the age of 15 and 19, my coach and I, we worked really hard. Hurdles is very technical. So I had 1 year, I believe, as a youth, where the hurdles were like 3 foot high. There were 100-meter hurdles. I spent that year running over hurdles. I won a few races. I think I won the county champs. I was running times like 15.2, 15.3. All the top boys in the UK were running times like 13.2, 13.3. They were miles ahead of where I was at. But for 3 years, I worked really hard, really, really hard on the technical side. I was always quick, but I worked really hard on the technical aspect of my event. But at the age of 16, my coach actually took me to one of the top clubs, Shaftesbury Barnet Harriers. And kind of there, I developed as an athlete more so, not just in the hurdles, but all round. But I'd say from around the age of 19, I became one of the top 3 in the UK as a junior in my event, running like 14.4. And then at Shaftesbury, because I was at Shaftesbury, there was guys like Jeff Morfitas who helped me along my journey, who would put me into the British League, and I'd get to race against a lot of top athletes, international athletes, be surrounded by the likes, Linford Christie's and, the John Ridgeons in the hurdle, and, the Tony Jacks. You'd see all of these guys on the circuit. And so for me, watching them hurdle, watching them, all the athletes do their thing, kind of really cemented the passion that was within me. And being around that level of athletes, there was a transparency. If you didn't train hard, you were going to get left behind. And I was never shy of hard work. And so I had a lot of determination to become a good hurdler.
Hurdles is a very every event is technical, but shall we say some events are more technical than others. And hurdles falls into that category because of the amount of different movements and different motions that the event demands that you execute. And your interest in hurdles came from just observing a hurdler. And what was your fascination with that for you to have so much fascination and make a decision that's what we're going to do?
I don't know what the exact point of change was. It was like I looked at the event and it just looked. I just looked at it and I thought, wow, it just looked so good. You know, see the women at the time, because it was Jurdanka Donkova I first saw run the hurdles. But there's something special about the hurdles. There's something very special. And as I pursued it, like I said, it was very difficult and challenging at first. But I took it on. I took on the challenge and I persevered. And I became a good hurdler. Was I the greatest? No. But I became a very good hurdler. But I loved it. For me, I wasn't the best sprinter. But taking the sprint speed that I had and combining it with hurdle technique, you know, there's lots of hurdlers that can sprint, but there's not a lot of sprinters that can hurdle. And I was very blessed in the fact that I was able to learn the technical side of it, and you know, and work on that, and kind of combine the two. So I found that the hurdling actually helped my sprinting mechanics. Funny enough, I felt like I was sprinting more efficiently as a hurdler than I was sprinting as a sprinter. I don't know how or why, because the guys I was running with, I was running like 14.4s, low 14s. And the guys I were running with were running like 10.7s, 10.6 and 10.8s. I was never that type of sprinter. I was like always around 11.1, 11.2. But I was able to use my speed in the hurdles a lot more efficiently. And it was just probably a combination of that, really. But initially, it was just seeing the event and falling in love with how it looked.
Yeah. Now, hurdles was not the only event that, if I may borrow the term, you fell in love with and you got involved with. You also done pentathlon, Gary. What was that all about? How did that come about?
Yeah, so really, when I was at the Shaftesbury Barnet Harriers, the club manager there was Jeff Moffitas, and he used to ask me could I help out in different events. So initially, I'd always be down to do the hurdles. More likely than not, I'd be doing the B string behind top hurdlers like Lloyd Cowan or Greg Dunson. But then I used to do the triple jump, and I was around a lot of people in the club that were good triple jumpers. So we do a lot of plyometric training anyway. So I used to just do it to get the point. Then I would do high jump, and I jumped very close to 2 meters in the high jump, like a 198 in the high jump. You know, I triple jumped off about 4 strides, 13.5 meters, and things like that. So these were good points in the club meets. Always used to run in the 4x1 relay on the first leg because I was a quick starter. I used to run in the 4x4. They put me on the third leg and do a 4x4. So every time I did a club match, I had to do lots of events. But one of the events I never tried was the long jump. And funny enough, Jeff said to me one day, Gaz, do you want to do a long jump? And I said, all right, I'll do it for you. And I did it. And I didn't jump that far. I jumped about 6.5 meters. And Jeff said, no, that was really good. You did really well. You can do it at the British League, because that was in a Southern League match. So I said, okay. He said, just sort out a run up. And so I did. And I found that I could long jump. My first competition, I wanted to beat the 6 meters 55 that I jumped in the first competition, which was 2 weeks earlier. I went out 6 meters 70 in the first round, then 680 something, and then 690 something, and then I was trying to break that 7 meters, and then I finished the competition on 7 meters 35, and that catapulted me straight into, I think, the top 15 in the UK in the long jump. And I was none the wiser. I had not a clue how good it was until, you know, Frank Atto said, you can come and train with us. So,
all right, Gary. Yeah.
Multi events.
Multi events, as it were. So tell me about your experiences, you know, with all these, your disposition that you had at the time to albeit it's just getting points for the clubs, but you had the capacity and also the attitude to want to do all these other events for the club, but yes, for their points, but I'm sure you also were getting some sort of satisfaction in doing those events. Was that not the case?
I did. Like I said, I've been, I don't know, I love the sport.
Yeah,
Still there?
Gary.
Yep, you're
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm here. You're just taking a bit of a break there. Yeah.
Yeah. What I liked about the club matches was Jeff always gave me an opportunity to do some other events. And for example, if the hurdles didn't go so great, I could go and take out my frustration on another event. And then and it was like your eggs were not all in one basket. I know if I did just the hurdles and it didn't go well, you tend to go home a little bit down and a little bit you beat yourself up. But it was nice to have these other events to kind of go and do as well. And every time I competed in these events, I always wanted to do best. So I didn't always train for them events, but a lot of our background is in them days was speed endurance. See, I had my hurdle side of it technical. So all the hurdles always complement the jumps, the high jump, the triple jump, because it's the same takeoff position, similar takeoff the position, and it's all very much plyometric. So I tended to lean towards those events, and yeah, it came a time when I thought, you know what, I don't know, I should multi-event.
Yeah.
But that didn't come till a bit later on in down the line. It was something I thought about, but I never actually put it into practice.
Oh, no, that's brilliant to hear that. So tell us about your international career. So at what point do you first test the international, engagements, and in what events was that in, and how did it come about?
Okay, so my first international taste was when I received my first England international, full international, which was in May 2000. That was for the long jump. So in 1998, I returned to my club in Luton and joined Luton. And in 1999, I jumped really well. And I returned with a personal best of, I think, of 7 meters 57 at the time.
Yeah. Are you there, Gary? We seem to be having a few breakups with Gary there.
Good.
Are you back, Gary? Yeah, we seem to be having a bit of a few hiccups with that connection there. Yes, you were saying.
So in 1998 was the Kuala Lumpur Games in Malaysia, and so at the time I jumped about 7 meters 57. I think the qualifying for the Commonwealth Games was 770, and I wasn't far off it. And then I didn't make the team because I had a bit of an issue with my knee. We weren't.
You, Gary?
Can you? Yeah, I'm still here.
If you, Gary.
I don't know.
Okay, Gary. Yeah.
Is it my connection or your connection? I'm not too sure.
No. You are freezing up, mate. You are freezing up. Maybe you want to stand on top of your root or something.
bear with me a second. Let me see if I can sort something out.
Well, Gary's sorting out his connection. Yeah.
Is that any better? I've taken off the data and I'm sitting on the Wi-Fi, so it should be better.
Okay, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, but after obviously receiving all the paperwork from UK Athletics at the time about, to measure you up for your suits for the Commonwealth Games and that, long jump was quite new to me. And even though I was jumping well, my heart still wasn't in the long jump. It was always with the hurdles. And I fell off the hurdles because, my coach passed away. And when she passed away, the wheels kind of come off. I was on the cusp of giving up the sport. But then I gradually moved into the long jump because I tried it, enjoyed it, and did well.
Just a thought there, Gary. Let's hold there. We'll come back to the long jump.
Okay.
If I may, get you to share a little bit more there about your love for hurdles was affected by the passing on of your coach, and that almost disrupted your engagement with your involvement rather with the hurdles. Would you like to share a bit more about that? How that
Yeah, it
That,
actually affected my involvement with the sport, because Jan was my first coach that I came to the track, and she's the first coach that I knew, and she worked really hard with me. She was like a mother figure. She was someone that, I was a young man. I wasn't living with my mum. She would pick me up. She would take me
mm,
training 3-4 times a week. She would enter me into competitions. She would travel me, take me up and down the country to competitions. She gave me massage. She would feed me at her house. She was just amazing. She would take me
mm,
to English schools to watch. I was never good enough to go to the English schools, but for I think 3 of them, she took me to watch. We went and camped out. We watched, and she had a way of kind of inspiring me and encouraging me all the time. And
mm.
so she was in my life all that time, and she became ill I was around the age of 20, and I'd already kind of hit a good level where I was now competing with the best in the UK. I was in the top 3. Uh,
Yeah.
but then what happened was she became more and more ill. So she spent less and less time with me, as in she
Mm,
wasn't able to drive. She wasn't able to kind of get around. And kind of at that time there, I was left to my own devices. And
yeah.
although I'd still train, it was a bit sporadic and it wasn't as consistent. And I still want to train hard. I didn't have the discipline that she would give me to train hard and then train medium and then train easy, and
Yeah.
allowing, like, I didn't understand the CNS system, but she had a better understanding of that. And so when she kind of came out of the equation or out of the picture, the wheels kind of fell off. And because I had inconsistent training, I began to get inconsistent results. I
Yeah.
began to get injuries, hamstrings mainly. Uh, and for about 3 years on the trot, I was just dogged with hamstring injuries. And as much as I love the sport, I was trying to stay in it and trying to stay in it and trying to stay in it. And it just started to drain me. And I got to a point where I was literally going to just give up the sport. And I was about 23 at the time.
Mm,
And like I said, I used to always do other events for the club, but not outside of the club. So when I went championships, it was always only hurdles. But then like I said, I found the long jump, and that was like a new lease of life. And then I got planted in a group with probably the best jump squad in the country at the time. It was Frank Hatto was the coach. He was a
mm,
massive coach. Aston Moore was around Frank Hatto. So I was around a lot of top jumpers, Ashley Hansen, who broke the world record. I was with Larry Achiki, Francis Ajipong, Chris Cotter. There was lots of good jumpers. And so I felt like I had a new kind of family. And
all right.
that kind of gave me a new lease of life. And because I was around them and they were top level athletes, I could do nothing but train like them. And I
Yeah.
began to get good results. So that kind of saved my athletics career for that last 10 years of my career. So I long jumped for the last 10 years of my career until the very, very last year.
Mm, mm,
So
mm.
that's tough. It was a tough time.
It was, yeah. Now tell us about you had many injuries, Gary, and and some of them freakish. Um, Tell us about the injuries you suffered in your garden and how they affected your training and the impact they had on you as an athlete.
You back, Stan? You're back. Okay. So the injuries I had before I talked about were hamstring injuries. As a long jumper,
Yeah,
I had 3 major injuries, and they happened to come probably within a 3-4 year window, and they were on the bounce. So,
mm,
1999, I had a bit of an issue with my knee. We thought it was just patellar tendonitis. So in 2000, we still had the issue. I jumped 7 meters 58 and got my first England international. That was the very first competition in May. I got selected to do the international. I went on to do a couple other internationals, one in Belfast and one at Loughborough. And then I was managing the pain in my knee,
yeah,
and that was in 2000. So the objective was to work towards the next Commonwealth Games, which was going to be in Manchester 2002. So because I got my England international, I was able to get physiotherapy from the England
Yeah.
physio, free of charge. So I went to see him. He basically scanned my knee. He showed up old scar tissue in my knee, and then he showed up a new tear in my knee. So I had a new tear, and I'd actually jumped 7 meters 58 off a torn patella tendon, and so he was very surprised that I'd done it. He put me through all this testing, which showed my biomechanics were all over the place. So he said I had two options. He said a major operation, or the alternative was to have laser treatment. So I opted for the laser treatment for a year. You still there, Stan?
Yes, I'm all right here, Gary. Go on.
So I opted for the laser treatment for the next year. So for the whole of 2001, I took the whole year off of competition, worked on weaknesses, worked on imbalances, had laser treatment to break down the scar tissue, which was being very effective. I actually began to do lots of weights. I began to do lots, a lot of PBs in the gym, lots of stuff on the track. But this was all preparation for 2002 because Commonwealth Games, I was going to look to compete in the decathlon that year. So we continued to train throughout the year. I was in the best shape of my life. We must have got to March 2002. I think I jumped indoors around 7 meters 30 indoors that year, which put me in the top 3 in the rankings after the indoor season. So I knew I was in good shape. I actually did the pentathlon, finished second behind a guy called Anthony Sawyer, who went to the Commonwealth Games. But in March, just before the season started, so I had this patella tendon that I had to deal with. We took the year off, made a sacrifice, got super strong, got super fast. And in 2002, just before the season, another freakish accident happened. We were doing a resistance drill in training in March one morning.
Yeah.
I'm usually coupled up with a different sprint partner. And it's one of them drills, you probably know it, Stan, where one guy faces you and puts his hands on your shoulders, and then you just power him up the track. And so the guy that I normally work with, he understood my power, and I understood his, and he could resist me at a certain level to make me work hard.
Yeah.
But one particular morning, he was late for a session, so I coupled up with another training partner, and I remember distinctively thinking to myself in my head as he was holding on my shoulders, I started to power him up the track, and I thought to myself, wow, this feels good. And I didn't feel the resistance that I'd normally get because my other training partner knew to resist me as hard as he could. But and as we got into about 15 meters into this run, you're in a very low trajectory. So I thought to myself, I'm going to work even harder, which I did. And my partner was running backwards really fast. And what happened was, because I was in such a low position, instead of him easing me up or whatever, I don't know, I really don't know what happened. He let go of my shoulders and I couldn't get up. So I crashed into the floor. And as I crashed into the floor, I've kind of tried to break my roll and I've smashed my left shoulder against the floor. And all I remember here, it sounded like a gun went off. Bang. And the ligaments and tendons in my shoulder that hold your collarbone down, I totally ruptured them both. And it was like, so for 5 minutes I sat out. I said to my coach, I said, I'm holding my shoulder. I said, I'm all right. He went, no, that's good. So I put my hand up like this. I said, it's all right. It's all good. I'll be back in a minute. So I put my arm down, and when I did, my collarbone was up near my ear. And I thought, whoa, I've done some serious damage here. This was literally a year after having a year out. And it was like, wow, I was in the best shape of my life, getting ready for Manchester. And all these things were going through my mind. And obviously, I didn't know what damage I'd done. I knew I'd done something bad. So I went straight to the hospital. And once they x-rayed it, instead of your collarbone being like this, mine was like this. And for a whole year, that wrote off my 2002. For a whole year, I couldn't lift weights. I couldn't bench press. I couldn't squat. I couldn't do anything. And then the third year, 2003, I had a really bad accident, a freak accident in my garden. It was after a barbecue. The very next day, I was cutting the grass, big petrol lawnmower. I tripped over. I got my foot caught under the lawnmower, and I amputated 3 of my toes on my right foot. So that was 3 years on the bounce. I tore my patella tendon twice, and then I ruptured my shoulder tendons and ligaments, and then the 3rd year was my foot. And every time I had an injury, my mindset was, I will bounce back. I will bounce back. So my glass is always half full. My cup is always half full. And I remember lying in hospital that evening after the operation, and I woke up in the morning about 6 o'clock, and I said to my coach, I said, you know what? I was predominantly long jumping then.
Yeah.
I wasn't hurdling. I was predominantly long jumping. And I said to coach, I said, you know what? If I can run again, I'll jump again, because it's not my left foot, and I jump off my left foot. He was like, look, let's not think about that right now. Let's just get you fixed. And I said, well, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
And
so
then
just which toes, what toes were amputated there, Gary?
So if you look at your foot, so if I show you my hand, you got your big toe and your little toe. It was the 3 in the middle. It was the 3 in the middle. The one next to my big toe, because they knew I was an athlete, and I kind of shared with them what I was doing and what I wanted to continue to do. They said they will try to save that one, because the other 2 were totally gone, mutilated. That one was off, but it had 2 fractures. And because of the risk of infection from the dirty grass and all the rest of it, the lawnmower, there was a chance they could try and fix it, but I'd end up losing it. So I had to sign the form for the amputation of all 3 toes. But thankfully, the Lord blessed me, and I kept the one next to my big toe. So I've got 2 completely missing. My foot is very much like that now.
Okay.
That's a bit of an issue when hurdling, because it's on my lead leg when I come down.
Yeah. Okay. So what adjustment did you have to do from a technical point of view as well as physical in terms of training, with this new situation where, you are accustomed, all along, you had all, the service of all your toes. Now you have 2 that are not in the, that are missing. How did that affect your training, your technical, impact and all that?
Okay, initially, the consultants told me I'd never run again. They explained the biomechanics of the foot, the pressure that's going to be on the big toe joint, and I'd be lucky if I jogged again. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't receive that. I thought, if I can't, then I can't, but I'm at least going to try. And so what happened was, I had my stitches in my foot for around 4 weeks before they could remove them. And my physio, who was in my corner, he said, I'm not going to work on you till the actual stitches have been removed. So I said, okay, that's fair enough. So 4 weeks, I kind of didn't do anything. But after that, my physio started to do a lot of proprioception work, started to do wobble board work, strengthening my ankles and my feet and stuff like that. And then I started to go to the track, not to necessarily do any training sessions, but just to kind of just be there, do some light stuff, some rehabilitation stuff. And one of my friends, funny enough, was trying to hurdle. And he's not a hurdler, he's a sprinter, but he was trying to hurdle. So I was trying to talk him through the technical side of hurdling, especially with the trail leg. And then I wasn't in pain, but I thought, you know what? Let me try and demonstrate it to him. So this was about 5-6 weeks in. So I went down the side of the hurdle and I did a trail leg, and I just popped over the side of the hurdle. And in my head, I got a green light. In my head, I went, that didn't hurt. So I said, let me show you that again. So I've gone back and I've gone, pop over the hurdle. And I thought, okay. And from that moment, I began to make my comeback. And within 12 weeks of my actual injury, I was back racing indoors. I made the British champion as a senior. Made the British Championship final. I ran, I think, 8:24 in the 60-meter hurdles, and I actually went on to run really well outdoors that year. Ran 14.7. I didn't really long jump because, like I said, my love was always for the hurdles. So kind of coming back into the sport after this injury, I thought, I'm not going to long jump again. I'm just going to try the hurdle. And that was it. I was gone. And that was it. And I never looked back until about a year later, when I thought I'll have a little break, because I went on such a high, as you can imagine. You know, I've had 3 years of adversity, 3 years of going into kind of mental overdrive. And at the end, to be honest with you, at the end, when we went into that September break before the winter, I hit a real low. And I had to then try to recover from that. And then I never came back to the sport and stayed out of it for about 13 years.
Yeah. Before we get to, to your position where you made the decision to quit the sport, I'd just like to take you back onto, because this is fascinating, that you came back to hurdle much from, it wasn't even by design or by planning. This was it was almost something that just came up in the moment in your trying to assist a fellow athlete to learn the skill of hurdling. Then do that by trying to demonstrate, you realize, oh, I'm not in pain here. And then you try and do it, and eventually you decide, I think I'm going to get back on it. From a pain point of view, that I understand. How about from a technical point of view? Were there any differences there, that you felt, and how did you manage them?
Yes, because I mentioned I ran 8:24 indoors, and that was actually a personal best. And what I found I had to do, because the toes were missing, I had to be more on the midfoot. And because I was more on the midfoot, I was able to sprint better than being a bit too toey. And so I had to learn to biomechanically strike the floor slightly different. And it actually worked in a positive way. The only issue I had and still have is really when I'm walking, because you go heel toe. When you're walking, you go heel toe. You're always pushing off the big toe. So my big toe joint is I have to manage the pain in that every day. But when I'm sprinting, because it's on the midfoot, it did teach me a lesson. It taught me a good lesson. So it was a blessing in disguise, really.
So you learned how you discovered the use of your spike plate courtesy of the injuries, right?
That's right. Strange but true. Praise God. Yeah. I tell you, all things work together for the good,
All right. Okay. That's splendid. That's amazing, Gary. And just to be able to have the mind and the willingness to be able to get yourself back onto the track, let alone try and hurdle. And
I think it'll always come down to choices. We can either choose to be a victim, or we can choose to be victorious. And if for any reason you can't do it, you're better off trying and failing than failing not trying. You know what I mean? And so, the consultants try to speak things into my life and say, like, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen, because he was basing it on his understanding of the body and the foot. But I am a testimony and proof that, you can achieve what you want to achieve. If you have faith and you believe and you're determined, and you're not going to, we all get knocks, and we all get, knocked about and get knocked down. But it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up. And so I've had to learn that along the way. And I think what that has done in me, it's built a resilience, it's built a strength. And when I left the sport in 2004, it was a choice. It was a choice to leave the sport, and so I know that if I'd have carried on, my coach at the time, Lloyd Cowan, he was like, listen, you're only a year away from competing as a master. Because I was like 33 and a bit then. And he was like, you're going to smash it. You're going to, but I wasn't interested. At the end of 2004, I'd gone on such a high for them overdrive. And there was a lot of other outside factors, with different things going on in my life as well that I had to manage. It was a difficult period. 2000 to 2004 was a very, very difficult period for me, outside of athletics as well. And so I decided to then, I wanted a year out. And in my heart, that was what I was going to do. I was just going to have a year out. And that year, I never came back to the sport until 2016. So
yeah. We will come back to that phase of
yes,
your journey. For now, I just like to see if I can pick your mind and the power of your mind and and of your emotions here. What would you say to young athletes out there, who struggling, with one injury or another, and they find themselves at crossroads? Do I continue the sport or do I not? What would you say to them from your own experiences?
I would say if you know in your own heart you're passionate about your sport, yeah, never give up. Never give up. Yeah, because athletics,
Yeah,
athletics has a way of teaching you lessons, life lessons. And if you give up, well, that's not a life lesson, is it? So for me, it's about I acknowledge the negatives in a situation, but for me, every problem there's always a solution. So I kind of always try to find the solution to the problem, and work with that. So I acknowledge, all right, this is a bad thing. I've just amputated my toes. This is an issue, but what can I do about it?
yeah,
How can I manage this? How can I actually deal with it in my head? So I have a tendency, and those around me will always tell you I'm very positive. I'm an encourager. I always see the cup as half full, and that's because I'm built that way. So I never put limits on myself. Never ever put limits on myself. And so I would say, don't put limits on yourself. Never give up. Failure's not an
yeah,
option. I always tell a lot of the youngsters that I think you never fail. Yeah, you never lose. You learn.
yeah.
And so I
You
always think
learn.
that from everything you do, you may think initially, oh, I lost that race, but you didn't lose. You've learned, and there's
Yeah,
something you will
you
learn and take away, which will make you a better athlete in the future. And so, it's about. I think if you don't have all of these little things, it doesn't build a steel in you as well. It's part of the journey. It's part of the journey, and
yeah.
I know that looking back now, those injuries I had were major injuries, right at the kind of pinnacle of my career. Uh,
Hmm.
but I didn't let them hold me back, and I think I proved that you can override certain things. You know what I mean? It will always come down to a choice.
Yeah.
And for me, I would just say never give up. Always work hard. And coming back into the sport now, one of the things I would encourage them with is train hard, but train smart, and always
Mm,
listen to
mm,
your body. Get a
yeah,
good get a good understanding of your own body, because we're not all built the same. And
yeah,
so, what if I feel like I can do another one or two runs, then so be it. But if you feel your body is saying no, 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 not today, listen to your body.
then
Yeah.
that's it.
And I'm the same. I know coming back into sport now, I'm very much like I will train hard, if not harder, but I will also take those recovery days. And
Yeah,
if I've got something in my program set up, say, I don't know, Saturday, Monday, Wednesday, then I get to Monday after Saturday and I don't feel quite recovered, I will then move my training from Monday, Wednesday to Tuesday, Thursday, just to give me
yeah,
that extra recovery, because I'm not going to gain nothing by trying to train while my body's still in recovery mode. And so move it another 24 hours should feel a lot better. Uh,
mm,
and I've learned a lot of that, especially
yeah,
coming back into the sport now.
mm, mm. Are
So
you going to
never give
tell?
up.
Yeah, you're going to share with me, Gary, and our viewers. And thank you, by the way. You're very kind, and your views are very candid regarding some of what you are sharing is very personal. But what is it that got you to a place where you had to give up the sport that you were enjoying so much that it's almost a contradiction that you have come back to the sport after all so many injuries and such accidents as that? You've come back, here you are performing without two toes, and
Mm.
then you give it up. Why? What happened?
Well, at that time, like I said, there was a lot of outside factors going on in my life at the time. And at that particular time, me and my wife had been together since 1999. A year later, when I got my international, my very first England international, my wife's mum passed away the very same month, which was May 2000. She was only young. My wife was young at the time. She was only 21. I was 26, 27. So we had to deal with that. That was a first time experience for me. So we dealt with that. But then within that same year, she'd lost her mum's dad. She'd lost her mum's mum. She'd lost her mum's dad's wife, you know, and then, you know, her dad ended up, you know, moving back to Scotland, which is like a bereavement. He went back home after losing his wife. Her brother moved to Canada. We then bought a house together. We're young. We then had our first child together. So in that short space, there was lots going on. And there was a period where I was having to be strong for her. There was a period when she was then having to be strong for me. And at the same time, I was still going through the track and field. And then I had all this adversity in my own personal body going on. And, you know, at the end of the year, sorry, let me rewind. So in 2003, when I had my accident, I actually found my faith in that period of time as well. So then in 2004, something that I always loved, or that was I identified myself with, I actually ended up giving up and laying it aside. But it wasn't, I never thought I'd return to the sport, and I laid it aside for 12, 13 years. And in that time, I was building my business, I was building my family life, I've got more children, and I was building my faith. Yeah. And so I never had a desire to come back into the sport in 2016. And so there was a lot went on in that, like I said, from 2000 to 2004 when I got up. I didn't give up. I kind of laid it aside because I wanted to just have a year out. But once I had that year out, you know yourself, when you're in athletics and you're at a high level, it's very selfish. It's a very selfish sport. You know, you make lots of sacrifices, and the people around you kind of they watch from the outside. It's all about your training and this and that. And so when I had that year out, I had my children. I had 2 children by this time, and I was really beginning to enjoy that time with them, taking my eldest one, he was like 8, 9, to football and spending that time with him at football. Then I had the little one growing up behind. He started doing football, and I was spending more time with my wife and quality time at home, and then my work and that. And so, and also I was building my faith. So certain things were just wasn't as important. And so I spent that up till 2016. But, you know, my kids are now grown. At the time, we had another little one who's 5, little man. And, you know, I just knew in my heart, my faith put it on my heart. It's time to go back in the sport. So my motivation and purpose of coming back into the sport was to achieve certain things, but not for me. It's about, it's a message. It's about giving back. It's about the next generation. It's about perseverance. It's about resilience. It's about not giving up. It's about no limitations. And it's about, you know, because what I've identified and noticed that I set a 4-year plan, and you will speak about that in the week. But if I said that to a youngster, they would not want to know. They'd be like, that's long. And I know that you reap what you sow, and you are not going to get nothing out of life if you only invest for 1 or 2 days or 2 weeks. And a lot of these youngsters nowadays are like, I'm not doing that. That's too long. If I said to them, look, we're going to go on a year's program or 2-year program, and you will achieve and do this, they'd be like, no way. Microwave society. So I want to prove, I don't just want to talk the talk with them when the time comes. I want to be a living proof. At 45, I returned to the sport. You can achieve whatever you want to achieve through hard work.
Just hold it right there, Gary. I think I've got a little clip here of your first return to the, you know, back after 13 years, was it?
13 years,
13 years out of the sport, and Gary makes a can.
front of Gary Smith from England. Come on, Gary. Gary Smith from England. With the timeout.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to play that again.
In front of Gary Smith from England. Come on, Gary. Gary Smith from England. With the timeout.
Yes.
Gary, just tell us, talk to us for viewers there that, that do not understand the Masters. Could you tell us what that competition is there and at what level is it at? Briefly, please.
Okay, well, that was the European Masters Outdoor Championships. It was held in Denmark in a place called Aarhus. And me returning to the sport, you become a master at 35. It's in 5-year age group categories all the way up to 100 plus. And so Masters is very much like the young side of athletics where you compete in age groups. For me, when I was 19, you became a senior up until you're 35. Nowadays, you've got under 20s, under 23s before you become a senior. So the beauty about Masters athletics is you go back into age group categories. So you compete against people in your own age, which is lovely. So for me, that was the M45s.
M45,
yeah. So that was my first. I hold that competition very dear because that was my first taste of international competition as a master. You showed the heats there. That was the heats. I actually went on in the final to get the silver medal behind. Well, in my age group, he's the best in the world.
Well.
But yeah, amazing.
I've got the final here. Let's see if we can.
Yeah, I see that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That brings back memories.
It does, yeah.
You know what?
Tell us about that fight.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. There's a lot that went into that. It was my first experience of one Masters Europeans Championship, and there's some amazing athletes there. And two, it was my first taste of a proper major championship as well. And so going out there, I really didn't know what to expect. But my training partner, Mr. Wilkinson, my favorite hurdler, he gave me some nuggets before I went out there. You know, just keep yourself to yourself, focus on what you need to do. Don't do too much walking. Get your own food in. Don't eat too much outside food and things like that. And you know what? That was very, very valuable because he's so experienced. And you know what? It kind of worked for me because lots of people were so excited and they were going around doing this and doing that. I was new. I could have got caught up in that, but I wasn't there for that. So my mindset was, I've worked really hard for this, not just me, but my coach, my family. So I'm representing everybody. And not only that, this journey I'm on, I set out on this journey to achieve, I wanted to win British championships, European and world championships. So I set out on this journey with a goal. And I didn't want to go there and be frivolous and get involved in other little things that could be detriment to my performance. So I took on board what Mr. Wilkinson said. And I'll tell you what, I had a really good heat. What you showed was my heats at first. I actually run a personal best into a 2 headwind. But I had so much nervous energy going through my system. Oh, mate, I'd never felt that nervous energy in my life. Yeah. And I remember sitting there and I had my headphones on trying to chill out because you've got to go to the call room, which is about 10 or maybe 20 minutes before you go out onto the track.
Yeah.
And trying to just keep a lid on that was a challenge in itself.
Absolutely.
And so I went out, I run my heat, and I got out and I ran really well, as you saw. But between the heat and the final, what happened was, and this is where I had to use wisdom. And so, like I said, you never lose, you learn. And I know that.
Indeed. Yeah.
No one knows it, but I know that between the heat and the final, I'd gone to the warm-up area to do my warm-up. I did my warm-up, I went through my warm-up. But what happened was on my trail leg, on my hip flexor side, on my trail leg, it was feeling very tight and a little bit sore. So my warm-up was actually compromised. And the last part of my warm-up would be blocks over 1, blocks over 2 hurdles, blocks over 3 hurdles, shut up shot. So they would be my last 3 dynamic runs. I wasn't able to do that. So I wasn't able to activate that part of my race. And that's a good part of my race. And I executed it in the heats. So what happened was I had to make a decision in the warm-up area. Do I carry on trying to do my warm-up as it's written, or do I compromise it slightly and just race? Because if I warm up too much, I could hurt myself and not race in the final. Or do I just race in the final, and if anything happens in the final, then it happens? I took the latter. I decided, no, I'm not risking all of that. I know I've got a chance of a medal here, and I did. And if you watch the final, you'll see my fellow compatriot Joe, who's a British athlete, awesome athlete, won loads of things, hold lots of records. He's a great starter. So he got out, and I didn't get out as well as I wanted to get out. And the Italian to my right-hand side, I remember feeling him at hurdle 1, right next to me. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, here we go. Hurdle 2, he was still there. I got to hurdle 3, he was still there. And there's a tendency as an athlete to want to try harder.
Yeah.
But all I heard was, in my spirit, I just heard this still calm voice just saying, hold your form. And in that moment, this calmness just come over me. And I know that we're running a race, but it's hard to articulate how these little things go through. But that's all I heard was hold my form. And so I didn't, from that hurdle 3, I didn't try to run any harder. I allowed momentum to gradually build itself through the race. And I just held my form. And if you watch the race back, the final, we were still level probably around hurdle 7. And there's only 10 hurdles. But hurdle 8, I could just feel myself holding my form and his form dropping off. Hurdle 9, inside I was smiling. I just needed to clear hurdle 10. And when we did, I just run through the line. I'm thinking, yes, I got my medal. You know what I mean? And so it was a great lesson to learn out there, you know.
Listen, Gary, we could chat with Gary Smith all night, but I tell you what, we've come to that point where we have to say good night, but only for part 1, because we've got part 2, haven't we? Next Wednesday, Gary.
Yes,
it's
sir.
Time to say to our viewers, good night for tonight. Shall we do that now?
Yes, sir. Good night, everybody. Good night. And thank you, Stan. Thank you very much. I'll see you again Wednesday.
Absolutely super lessons, Gary, giving us there, and great stuff indeed.
Yes. Stan? That was